there were at least 500,000 dead, including an estimated 130,000 executions, about 75,000 on the Franco side and 55,000 on the Republican. Hugh Thomas, the historian, says, the great working-class parties of Spain had been overwhelmed, along with their wild, generous and violent dreams. 300,000 Spaniards were to go into permanent exile, thousands more to disappear in Franco's prisons. The Germans and the Italians went home for a few months before starting up the whole bloody roundabout again elsewhere. Tom Adlam was in a batch of prisoners exchanged for Italians.
Someone asked, who's the oldest one here? Tommy Adlam. Tommy Adlam, take over, you the vet, take over in front. So I had to stand out now and give the orders, fall in. And all the boys fell in. Told them, now look, we're marching out here with our heads up, chest out and our back straight. We come in with pride and we march out with pride. So they give orders, march off. We started marching down the road. This man standing marching to the side of me. Next thing the boys started freaking out. There's a valley in Spain called Arma, and no pass around. And we sang all the way from that building till we was halted just at the edge of the bridge. And he handed some papers or something over, and then quick march, and away we go. And as we passed over the bridge, everyone gave the Republican salute and shouted, "Long live Spain," and we were met halfway across the bridge by the French troops that was on guard the other side. And that's our last day in Spain.
It's fading. Names would escape me now, but the memories of the faces are not fading as I saw them. I don't suppose I could envisage the children that I knew as adults, and the adults that I knew now are either very old or passed on, dead. The one name I do remember is of a little girl, what should be about 5, Pilar Herrewella. She hung on to myself and Pat. So Pat and I now, he bought her a pair of shoes. She'd only been wearing the rope-soled zapatos. Well, she was overjoyed. You thought that we'd given her the moon. That is the one child I think that I would remember, and remember her face as well as her name.
I returned from Spain in April 1940. There had been a big campaign in Wales and in the House of Commons to get me released. But Franco forces wouldn't allow me to be released. But the Americans had started buying their prisoners. There were a few Americans. I was the last Britisher in the prison, as far as I know, in the prisons of Spain, and the last of the international brigaders. So that the Americans had bought their people out. There was about 5 at the penitentiary of Burgos, and they paid quite a bit of money to get them out. So that put the British government in a difficulty, and Franco was short of money. So what they'd done with the Americans, they'd sold these prisoners to the Americans. And so the British government had to follow suit. Now, I was sold by Franco to the British government, and they paid, or they gave a loan to Franco of £2 million and a trade agreement. And on the day that was signed, I was released.
I had to go and report back on the Dawn. And I had a lovely welcome with one of the clerks who happened to be an officer in the territorials. And said he was quite proud of us boys. So I said, look, I come to sign on, yes. But look, by the way, I said, I think there's some money owing to me. He looked at me strange. He said, what do you mean, Tom, money owing to? So I said, I think you owe me 2 days' dawn. You worked it out. I said, the week goes from Wednesday to Wednesday, isn't it? Yes, well, I said, I got 2 days coming to me from the time I left England 2 years ago. And he said, damn. And he said, you're quite right, too. I'll call the manager.
When I got back to Roslanachrigal, I found that both my parents had died in the meantime. And they had received a death certificate from the Spanish Republican government, that is the side I was fighting from, to say I'd been killed in action. and they had handed that certificate to the insurance company who'd paid out on it. They'd put the money in a drawer, and the money was there when I got home, so I came home to spend my own death benefits.
In 1940, I was called up into the British Army. And later that year, when I was in Newmarket, I received a letter from the Foreign Minister, Lord Halifax, inviting me to repay the £12 it had cost the British government to bring me from Ripoll in Spain to London. I wrote back to him and said, Minister, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Asking a man who fought fascism in Spain and is now in the British Army doing the same thing, to repay a paltry £12. I never heard another word.
When I got back from Spain, talking to people, they just didn't want to know. Didn't want to know anything at all about Spain. Well, I was telling about the bombing. They told me they don't bomb people. I said, don't they? They don't bomb people. They bomb towns full of people. And I was disappointed and upset with everybody. And I said to myself, all these marvelous men I knew out there, nobody cares. I opted out of the whole situation from then on in. I didn't want to know.
Before the countless wounds of Spain were opened, a young man from South Wales had a vision of how it would all end. He was a student here in the new University of Madrid. Now, as chorus to the story, Gwyn Thomas recalls how in 1934 he heard a captain in the Spanish army say this of the young and hopeful republic.
Of course, it will have to be destroyed. I said, what do you mean, destroyed? Well, he said, this present government, the system of ideas, will have to be destroyed. I said, you mean voted against? An obscenity, he said. Voting, voting, voting. Destroyed. Cataclysmically destroyed. Well, by what means? Are you going to agitate? Are you going to organize propaganda? Look at this. You see this insignia of the Spanish artillery. The guns that won South America will again regain Spain for the faith and traditional values. Now, I never heard this kind of language before in my life, you know. It was astounding. But this was it, you see. This was it in a capsule. This marvelous idea that if you have 100,000 people in a state organized in one small system of ideas, and ideas based on a technology which is the technology of death, you were onto a winner. And so it proved that despite all these marvelous donations of love and valor from the four corners of Europe and the world, it was that man sitting next to me in that table in Madrid who decided the issue. He knew precisely what he wanted, he knew precisely what he hated, and he won.